Today we move from intuition to engineering judgment. In the last session you saw something powerful. Adding threads dramatically improved performance when the workload was I/O bound. Latency collapsed, throughput improved, CPU usage increased but remained under control. That feels like magic. But engineering is dangerous when something feels like magic. So today we will break that illusion. We will see when threads help. We will see when they stop helping, and most importantly, we will understand why, mathematically, experimentally, and architecturally. By the end of this lecture, you will not just know how to use thread pools. You will know when not to. Let's begin where we left off. In the single-threaded model, every request blocks the next one. If one request waits 100 milliseconds for a database call, everything behind it waits 2. That's why latency grows linearly under burst load. Now we introduce a thread pool. Instead of processing requests one by one, we allow multiple requests to wait simultaneously. If one thread is sleeping, waiting on I/O, another thread can work. This is the key. Concurrency overlaps waiting. And when you run this, you'll see something dramatic. Latency collapses under load, throughput increases significantly, CPU usage rises, but now it's doing useful work instead of sitting idle. This is your first lesson in systems engineering. Concurrency is about hiding waiting time. It is not about creating speed, it is about reclaiming wasted time. This is where the lecture becomes real. I don't want you to believe slides, I want you to measure. Start the server with a fixed pool size, say 10 threads, then use the load client to simulate 50 concurrent clients. Warm up the JVM, discard early measurements, and export results to CSV. Now compare this with the single-threaded server. What should you observe? The median latency of P50 should drop significantly. The tail latency on P95 should also improve. Throughput should increase. This is empirical evidence that concurrency helps when the workload is I/O bound. But don't stop here, because we're about to break it. Now we change one variable, the pool size, 5 threads, 10 threads, 50 threads. Same load, same machine, same workload. Now ask the critical question. Does a bigger pool always improve performance? Intuitively, many students assume yes, more threads means more parallelism. But engineering doesn't reward intuition, it rewards measurements. Watch what happens to P95. Watch what happens to throughput. There is always a sweet spot. And finding that sweet spot is what separates engineering from guessing. This slide is philosophical. We measure P50, the median latency. That tells us what the typical user experiences. We measure P95, the tail latency. That tells us what the unlucky users experience. And we measure throughput, how many requests per second we can handle. Why does P95 matter so much? Because users don't remember averages. They remember the slowest interactions. If 1 out of 20 requests is painfully slow, that's the experience they associate with your system. This is the shift from theory to engineering maturity. We do not guess performance. We measure it. This table is not busy work. This is your engineering record. You will fill in pool size versus P50, P95, and throughput, and you must support it with CSV data. Why am I strict about evidence? Because in real systems, performance claims without measurement are meaningless. If you cannot reproduce your numbers, you do not understand your system. This table forces discipline. Now comes the conceptual trap. So far, threads helped because we were hiding I/O wait. Now we remove the waiting. Instead of sleeping 100 milliseconds, we compute Fibonacci recursively, pure CPU work. Now rerun the same experiment. Same load, same pool sizes. This is where the illusion breaks. Run the CPU-bound server with 10 threads, measure. Then increase to 50 threads, measure again, what happens? CPU usage now goes to 100%. Throughput plateaus. In large thread pools may actually increase P95. Why? Because once the CPU is fully utilized, adding threads does not add compute power. It only adds scheduling overhead. Context switching increases. Cache locality decreases. Concurrency no longer hides waiting because there is no waiting to hide. This is the moment students realize concurrency is not magic speed. Let's interpret the results. When CPU reaches 100%, your hardware becomes the limiting factor. Throughput cannot exceed what your cores can compute. Large pools increase contention and context switching, so performance may degrade. This is the moment where intuition must give way to theory, and that theory is Amdahl's law. Amdahl tells us the maximum theoretical speedup is limited by the non-parallel portion of the workload. If the workload is fully CPU bound, meaning parallelizable fraction approaches 1, the maximum speedup approaches the number of cores. Threads do not create CPU cycles, they only help distribute them. So if you have 8 cores, your maximum realistic speedup is around 8. That's it. Mathematics imposes a ceiling. Engineering must respect ceilings. Now we bridge theory and practice. The optimal number of threads depends on the ratio of waiting to computing. If the system spends most of its time waiting, heavy I/O, you can benefit from larger pools. If the system is compute heavy, your pool size should be near the number of cores. This formula is not magic, it's a heuristic, but it's grounded in measurement and queuing theory, and this is the real engineering mindset. We do not maximize threads, we size threads. Now apply the formula to your own machine, count your cores. Compute recommendations for different weight compute ratios. Then compare that recommendation with your measured sweet spot. If theory and experiment align, you've learned something powerful. If they don't align, investigate why. That's research thinking. This lab is not about code volume, it's about understanding. You must submit. Measured data, CSV evidence. CPU-bound comparison, and a short explanation connecting your results to Amdahl and the tuning formula. If your report contains numbers without data, it is invalid, because engineering without evidence is storytelling. We have now seen something important. Threads help for I/O. Threads hit limits for CPU. Large thread pools introduce overhead. So here's the question. What architecture avoids large thread pools entirely? What if instead of using many threads, we use one thread and never block? That's the idea behind event-driven and asynchronous systems. And that is where we go next. Today you moved from coding to systems thinking. You saw that concurrency can dramatically improve performance, but only under the right conditions. You saw that CPU-bound workloads are limited by hardware. You saw that mathematics, not optimism, determines scaling limits. And you learned that engineering is about trade-offs, not ideology. Not threads are good or threads are bad, but measurement theory and judgment. In the next lecture, we will explore an alternative architecture, one that avoids large thread pools and solves a different class of problems. But remember this, concurrency is not speed. Concurrency is hiding waiting, and hiding waiting always comes with a cost.